My old high school friends, Tom and Derek, had rented a house near the University of Maryland in College Park. They'd ride their bikes to class, make art, and jam on various instruments in their spare time. Their house had a dedicated jam room filled with guitars, bass, drums, and synthesizers. I'd often stay at their place, and we'd chill and try to record something decent in their makeshift studio. I had this little tape recorder I bought from Radio Shack and thought it might be fun to record our jam sessions, maybe even catch some paranormal activity, as Tom had told me some strange things had been happening in the house. He mentioned how they'd occasionally see smoke appear and disappear out of nowhere. They'd partake in the occasional devil's lettuce, so at first it didn't seem like the weirdest thing. We decided to test out the recorder for some spirit hunting. I did the usual, asking questions like, "Who's living here?" and "Can you tell us your name?" But nothing came through on the recordings except my own voice. One night, Tom and I were jamming alone at the house. He mentioned he needed to pick up his girlfriend in Virginia, about an hour away, so he headed out. I stayed behind, playing guitar by myself. As I played, I kept hearing Tom talking on the phone outside. 15 minutes passed, and I still heard him. Curious, I went to the front door to check why he hadn't left yet. But as soon as I opened the door, the voice stopped, and I realized his car was gone. Just then, a cloud of white smoke appeared in front of me and quickly dissipated. It was strange, but I chalked it up to my imagination and went back to playing guitar. Not long after, Derek came home, and I told him what had happened. He didn't seem too surprised. Both he and Tom had experienced plenty of weird stuff. They seemed like magnets for the paranormal. Derek grabbed his bass, and we started jamming again. About 10 minutes in, I heard a voice. "Stop," it said. It sounded just like Tom. I kept playing, thinking it was odd. But then I heard it again, louder this time. "Stop!" It was unmistakably Tom's voice, with that distinct nasally tone. But Tom wasn't there. He was still an hour away in Virginia. Derek and I both stopped playing. I asked him if he heard it, and he nodded. "What did you hear?" I asked. He replied, "It sounded like Tom yelling 'stop.'" When Tom finally came back, we told him what had happened. We were all pretty freaked out, but it didn't stop us from enjoying the night and recording some music. In fact, the strange energy might have even given our music a little extra edge. Tom and Derek continued living in that house for another year, and the weird occurrences didn't stop. Tom later told me he had been karate chopped by what felt like a child, and had seen a little boy, dressed in 1800s clothing, appear in a misty haze several times throughout the house. For the purpose of this story, names and room numbers will be changed. I'm a small, 18-year-old girl, which I feel adds to the fear factor of this story. This happened just last Saturday night. My friend Leah and I went to a football game, got bored, and decided to go to a haunted house with our friends Terry, Dawson, and Emma. It was a haunted corn maze, and we had a blast. Afterward, the night was winding down, so Leah, Terry, and I headed back to Terry's dorm to hang out some more. We dyed Leah's hair and were watching a movie when 3 loud bangs came from the door. Terry's roommate answered it. We heard a grunt and saw a man, who none of us recognized, walk past Terry's room and into the bathroom. We were all confused, so we stuck our heads out of the door and saw Terry's roommate on the floor. The guy had shoved him just to get into the room. None of us knew the man. We nervously laughed it off, trying to make jokes about the weirdness. Terry's roommate went to the front desk to report that a random guy had just come into our room and was now taking a shower. It was Saturday night, so we thought maybe he was drunk and wandered into the wrong room. But then we started hearing rustling loud scratching, and banging from the bathroom door. Our laughter stopped. We locked ourselves in Terry's room, starting to get scared. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened. We froze as the man started pounding on Terry's door, his breathing heavy and menacing. Leah and I screamed as the banging got louder and more violent, with him slamming his full weight against the door. Terry, in the back corner of the room, was spiraling into a panic attack. "What the hell is happening?" Leah asked, but none of us had an answer. It had gone from a weird situation to something terrifying. This wasn't just some drunk guy. No one that drunk could throw themselves at a door with that much force. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Silence. 3 minutes passed. Then we heard it, scratching. He was dragging his nails down the door, like a dog begging to be let in. "Let me in," he whispered. "Please, let me in. Please, I know you're in there. Let me in." The banging resumed, louder and more desperate. How had no one else in the dorm heard this? Where was the security Terry's roommate had gone to get? I slid down the wall, trying to calm myself, but fear had overtaken me. I have a stress disorder and take medication for it, but this situation was too much. I was barely holding it together. Finally, after what felt like forever, campus security arrived. 25 minutes after the roommate left. But instead of removing the guy immediately, they sat him down for a conversation. I was furious. What if we hadn't been able to lock the door? Would they have taken this long to help? The man claimed he wasn't drunk, hadn't smoked anything, and was fine. As security continued questioning him, he grew more agitated and violent. Eventually, they managed to escort him out, but not before a scuffle broke out. We could hear it through the door. Finally, one of the officers knocked on our door, saying it was safe to come out. When we opened the door, something fell to the floor. The officer's eyes widened as he realized what it was: a pocket knife that had been lodged in the door. They hadn't checked him for weapons before sitting him down. I was livid. It had taken them 25 minutes to arrive, and they hadn't even properly searched him. Leah started crying as we left the room. Security searched the rest of the dorm and found a crumpled ball of tinfoil, later confirmed to contain heroin. This guy had been high out of his mind, armed with a pocket knife, and all security could say was, "Have a safe night." What a joke. This happened when I was 18 or 19, during my first year of college in a small town in the South. My college experience was rough overall, and this incident just added to the mess that was my freshman year. To set the scene, I lived in a sweet building with an attached parking garage. The garage had about 4 or 5 levels, with the top level being at ground level. From the parking garage, it was about a 5-minute walk down a sidewalk to the entrance of the suites. Near the sidewalk, there was a small glass-walled room that housed the elevator. At the time, I had a boyfriend who lived off campus, and I spent a lot of time at his place in a neighboring town because I hated being on campus. I had an 8 a.m. class, so I'd usually return to my suite late at night or in the early morning. One night, I came back around 2 a.m. The parking garage was pretty full, so I had to park at the far end, near the ramp leading to the lower levels. I've always been afraid of parking garages, so I made a habit of parking on the top level where it was open. It was dark, but nothing unusual that night, so I didn't bother calling anyone like I sometimes did when I felt uneasy. As I was walking toward the sidewalk, I noticed someone inside the little elevator room. He'd been behind the wall, but I saw him step out. He didn't come out of the elevator. I would have seen the doors open through the windows, so it struck me as odd. From what I could tell, he was a middle-aged man, and I found it strange he was on campus so late since the building mostly housed freshmen and other young students. I tried to brush it off and kept walking. But as I reached the sidewalk, about 20 feet from the elevator room, he came out and started walking behind me. At first, I tried to stay calm, rationalizing that it might just be a coincidence. But as I walked further, I realized he was getting closer. There was a post with a button to call campus police, but something in my gut told me not to let him know I was aware of him, or that I was scared. I had to make a quick decision. I started sprinting down the sidewalk. Immediately, I heard him start running too. He was chasing me. There were 3 entrances to the building. I usually used the farthest one because my room was on that side, but the moment I reached the first entrance, I swiped my card and slammed the door shut behind me. He was right there, on the other side of the door. We locked eyes for a couple of seconds. Then he turned and ran off. I was terrified. To this day, I wonder what his intentions were, but I'm thankful I never had to find out. The next morning, I woke up to an email about a strange man spotted on campus. Even now, thinking about it gives me chills.